one author who left a lot of writings behind him, and one of these writings is also alchemical. At least I know for one of this, and it is, if I remember well, it is a half theoretical and half it looks like some receipt. Receipt how to make gold from other basic metals. Yeah. So it is very interesting. And Psellos wrote, of course, as I said, a lot of writings on different fields, very different fields. Today I will speak on several of his writings in which he tried to explain how earthquakes occurred and why in a way, and to reconcile natural philosophy which was inherited from the antiquity with Christian philosophy. And it is the earthquake is chosen only for this sake because you will see actually why. The earthquake is on the earthquakes in Byzantium, and particularly in Constantinople, a lot of material has been preserved in historical sources. They provide evidence for about 70 earthquakes that hit Constantinople from the city's inauguration as capital of Roman Empire in 323 till its fall to the Ottomans in 1453. The epicenter sometimes was in Constantinople itself, but even when it was far removed from it, it could have catastrophic consequences to the capital as well. It is, however, almost certain that during this period that lasted for over 1,100 years, actually much more than 70 earthquakes occurred, which is strongly suggested by the result of one research that showed that from the beginning of the 6th century till the end of the 19th century, 548 earthquakes were indicated. In average, approximately one earthquake hit Constantinople per 2.5 years. Similarly, in ancient sources, there are many references to earthquakes that happened in antiquity. It is by no means surprising, since this region is known for being often exposed to earthquakes. All of us certainly remember the earthquake that in 23 on February 6, which means last year, hit the eastern part of Turkey and Syria, killing about 60,000 people and completely destroying many buildings. One strong quake hit Istanbul in the summer of 1999, and 1 month later another earthquake occurred in Athens. It wasn't as disastrous as the quake of the 23, but still it was very strong. In Byzantine chronicles, many quakes are mentioned, providing only basic information about them, such as the place and the year when earthquake happened. Normally, chronicles add some statements they borrow from each other. For example, we usually read that this particular quake was strong and more disastrous than any other before it. So it is a topos. Or that the town that had been hit by an earthquake was not town anymore, but the common tomb for its inhabitants. Reactions of the population are only rarely described by chroniclers, although there are some remarkable exceptions. Thus, 9th century chronicler Theophanes Confessor, describing the earthquake that hit Eastern Roman capital on September 25 of 437, says people went outside the city walls and stay there for a long period of time. They were so afraid that they didn't want to sleep at home. Rather, they preferred to sleep in tents or under the open air. Flock, led by their bishop, day by day was praying, performing religious processions in the field outside the city walls. And cambo isan lita nemondes, says Theophanes. Similarly, in the account by the 6th century historian Agatias, we can read that Constantinopolitan flock was praying after a strong earthquake hit Constantinople in 557 on December 14. But what was novel in this case is that this earthquake was not forgotten, given that the church established commemorative procession to be performed every year on December 14. Soon after, similar commemorative processions were being held on January 26, September 25, and October 7. To recall previous earthquakes the city had experienced, mostly during the age of the Emperor Justinian. In the subsequent centuries, several new similar commemorations were added. From the 10th century liturgical sources, for example, Synaxarium of Constantinople, Menologion of Basil II, or Typicon of the Church, of the Great Church of Saint Sophia, we know that at that time there were 7 days set aside every year for processions and services to remind the Byzantines of their previous deliverance from earthquakes. This approach to the earthquakes would be typically Byzantine, but there was also another approach. It was scientific. The scientific explanation of the earthquakes in Byzantium was inherited from antiquity, and it was largely based on Aristotle's theory as exposed in the second book of his Meteorology. Polyhistor Michael Psellos, who lived in the 11th century, was one of these learned Byzantines. For this reason, it would be useful to sketch first Aristotle's corpus on natural philosophy and its reception in Byzantium before moving to the case of Psellos. As to the reception of Aristotle's meteorology in Byzantium, it is enough to mention several important intellectual figures that thought meteorology or wrote commentaries on it. Among them are Evstratios of Nicaea, Theodoros Metochitis, Nikephoros Phlemidis, Gennadios Scholarios, Pachymeris. All of them lived after Psellos. We don't have evidence that would be unquestionable that meteorology was taught in Constantinople before Psellos' time, or that any commentary or compendium had been written after mid-6th century, when commentaries on meteorology were written by Christian philosopher John Philoponus or Neoplatonist Olympiodorus, the last head of the Neoplatonistic school in Alexandria, who lived in the first half of the 6th century as well. Yet, from this period that lasted for 5 centuries, between mid-6th and mid-11th century, we have important evidence about manuscript transmission of the meteorology. Namely, there are 2 manuscripts from the 9th and the 10th century that contain meteorology. And they are actually the most important manuscripts of this work that are preserved till today. This clearly shows that even in these times, there was an interest in ancient meteorology. Meteorology was an integral part of Aristotle's natural philosophy, together with 3 other books. Physics, first one is physics, in which it is the study of natural motion of change. The second one is on heaven, on the mechanisms of the heavenly bodies in the etheric sphere. And the third one is on generation and corruption, which gives the general principles governing the intermixture of the four elements in the sublunary world. Exactly the thing on which alchemy is based, that we heard before. Here I will provide a concise description of these four books. The three books, the fourth one is meteorology, as I said. And here is a concise description of these four books by the words of Aristotle himself that we found in the first sentences by which meteorology begins. Aristotle said, "We have already discussed the first causes of nature and all natural motion, also the stars ordered in the motion of the heavens, and the physical element enumerating and specifying them and showing how they change into one another and becoming and perishing in general. There remains for consideration a part of this inquiry which all our predecessors called meteorology." So in the first sentence, he referred to the first book, to physics. We have already discussed the first causes of nature and all natural motion. There, also the stars, it is the second book on heavens. The stars order in the motion of the heavens and the physical element enumerating and specifying them and showing how they change into one another. Now we have about change and becoming and perishing. So it is on generation and corruption of these things. So it is in medias res. In this meteorology, it gives subject of whole book in medias res, as all ancient and medieval good authors do always in medias res. You should read first sentences always very carefully, as in every single work, from Iliad and then. So he said in the last sentence, "There remains for consideration a part of this inquiry which all our predecessors called meteorology." So it was already established tradition. Meteorology, ancient meteorology, is something different than ours. In meteorology itself, Aristotle deals with a wide spectrum of knowledge related not only to weather phenomena and climate, but also to the material from disciplines such as astronomy, geography, and mineralogy, for example. And also it is, let us take glance one more at the author's words, Aristotle's words, at the beginning of his book of meteorology. It, this meteorology, not mineralogy, is concerned with events that are natural, though their order is less perfect than that of the first of the elements of the bodies. They take place in the region nearest to the motion of the stars. Such are the Milky Way and comets and the movements of the meteors. It studies also all the affections we may call common to air and water, and the kinds and parts of the earth and the affections of its parts. These throw light on the causes of winds and earthquakes, and all the consequences the motions of this kind and parts evolve. Meteorology studies four elements, earth, water, fire, and air, particularly in combination with the four qualities of physical bodies, hot and cold, wet and dry, and the way in which these elements and qualities interact. In this scope, Aristotle discusses the products of two kinds of terrestrial exhalations, evaporations, anathemiasis in Greek, given off by Earth under the influence of the sun, the one being hot and fiery, dry and gaseous, the other moist, cool and aqueous, pneumatodestera and atmidodestera. The first three books of meteorology are mostly dedicated to the study of the natural phenomena produced by these two types of exhalations. So, to the first type belong rain, dew, frost, snow, all of them are attributed to moist or vaporous kind of exhalations, evaporations. On the other hand, to the second kind is shooting stars, meteors, comets, Milky Way, thunder, lightning, winds, and winds of all sorts, and finally earthquakes. Earthquakes are also attributed to this pneumatodestera, enthymiasis. Smoky kind of oscillation, in other words. Now, Michael Psellos wrote also some, before move to what he wrote on earthquakes. I here mention some of his essays on different kinds. He tried to explain not only how earthquakes occurred, but also he wrote short texts on comets, some interpretation on comets, on sundog, on winds, on snow, on dew, on rainbow, on thunder, on thunderbolt, and on earthquakes, and some others. So for all of this, he uses this meteorology book by Aristotle. And in some cases, commentators, late antique commentators, especially Olympiodorus. Specifically for earthquake, he couldn't use Olympiodorus because he wrote only commentary on the first book of meteorology, while the earthquake is explained in the second one. If for some other cases, Olympiodorus he used Olympiodorus even more than Aristotle in some cases. But as to earthquakes, one can observe that Psellos borrows not only some words, some phrases, but even all paragraphs. Word by word, you can find copied, some paragraph copied in his text. Return back to Aristotle, what he says about earthquakes. Aristotle argued that they are caused by movements of air, pneumata, in underground caverns. These subterranean winds are produced when the exhalation doesn't leave out the earth, but it is returning inside it. In Aristotle's words, we have already shown that wet and dry must both give rise to an evaporation. Earthquakes are a necessary consequence of this fact. The earth is essentially dry, but rains fills it with moisture. Then the sun and its own fire warm it and give rise to a quantity of wind both outside and inside it. This wind sometimes flows outwards in a single body, sometimes inwards, and sometimes it is divided. All these are necessary laws. Next, we must find out what body has the greatest motive force. Kinetikotaton. This will certainly be the body that naturally moves furthest and is most violent. Now, that which has the most rapid motion is necessarily the most violent, for its swiftness gives its impact the greatest force. Against the rarest body, that which can most rapidly pass through every other body, is that which naturally moves furthest. It is, of course, the air and the winds. Wind satisfies these conditions in the highest degree, so that no water nor earth is the cause of earthquake, but wind, that is the inrush of the external evaporation into the earth. Hence, since the evaporation generally follows in a continuous body in the direction in which it first started, and either all of it flows inwards or all outwards, most earthquakes and the greatest are accompanied by calm. So it is not windy many times when it is when earthquakes occur. One important remark should be added here. From the point of view of ancient meteorology, all meteorological phenomena are just natural phenomena. From the Christian point of view, however, they are not. Not all of them. Some phenomena, above all an earthquake, are rather an integral part of the universal cosmic drama. Political or social disorder is confirmed and prolonged by natural disaster. Every natural disaster is nothing else but a link in the chain of political and social history. Social and political history. It is very important to note that because actually this is reason why only in the case of earthquake, Michael Psellos was not satisfied with Aristotelian explanation or the explanation of his on the commentaries, because they feel that earthquake is something more than natural phenomena. It is a cosmic drama, universal drama, and that's why it needs another kind of explanation. It is again we have at the beginning of I tried to translate and some the beginning of Psellos' speech, because it is not translated in any language as far as I know. This is important because it describes, and I think that we can see from this quotation, actually that his audience and he himself feel that this cosmic drama that happens. The subject of this speech, says Psellos, divine and dear to God audience. That is less troublesome than frightening and full of affection, is now confusing both our languages and our souls. Namely, what could be more terrifying than God's threat? Rather, what could be more frightening and more difficult than the punishment coming up from that side? Because, let me say so, the whole universe, to Simban, has been shaking. The foundation of the whole, Topan, has been moved, and the safe seat of our nature now needs strong support so that it could resist. And furthermore, just few sentences further, he said, how could I be exhorted now to speak to you when the evil is at its height and the waves are getting stronger and rising upon each other like in a shipwreck, while squalls and hurricanes are treating that they will shake this worldly vessel, this world, and are trying to turn upside down public security of the people and the city. So, in this sense, Michael Psellos, and for this reason, was not satisfied with the Aristotelian interpretation of the earthquake as being just not natural phenomena, and he proceeded to Christian interpretation. For him, as he explicitly said, God is that who is shaking the earth, and for him it is an axiom. It is for us axiom or self-evident principle. Axiom, or in Greek axioma, here means what is exactly the self-evident principle, which is something which is normal in logic and mathematics. Even today it is used. And he said that it is axioma. It is something which should not be proved by no means. It is for us axiom, self-evident principle, in other words, that God is cause of everything. Whereas it is perceptible through our senses that God gives to the things to be proximate or immediate causes. So it is something which is elaborated throughout this work, because the God is the first cause, and the second causes are can be anything else, because God acts through, as Psellos said in other note, he can act through sometimes heavenly forces, other thing through elements, water, air, earth, and fire, and sometimes through bodies, like is in this case of the earthquakes, because he acts through by winds, with winds, and which means air. Then he proceeded with some philosophical question. We can can't talk about them now, but one of them I just would mention: why God has not given safe base to every created thing, but the heavens remain without firm foundation, because the heavenly bodies are moving, while the rest of the created world, not only the earth, but also the stars, the air, and the sea, that are not stable, but are always in moving. Or the second question, should one think that in the beginning the nature was harmonious, but only later the order turned to a disorder? Both reason and sense perception confront this way of thinking, Psellos has said. We can observe, he continues, that in accordance with the first order, the heaven is immovable, while the air is always in move, just as the sea and the streams or rivers, all of them always keeping the orders they received from the Creator, feeling that they must fulfill the most needed justice. Psellos, to finish with this, it is a clearly Christian position, but also he turns against many, he said, who argue that God is set immediately over sensible things, like using his hands. It is so he needs, he acts usually, so as I said, through something else. In order to rule and minister, he concluded that this opinion is completely unreasonable. So it was, I tried to present how and why he was not satisfied in this particular case on writing on earthquake to keep just to maintain Aristotelian approach, but he tried to reconcile this with Christian approach. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dejan. This was a magisterial exposition. But I was really intrigued by something you said in the beginning of your paper. Did you said, if I didn't understand you wrongly, that Psellos actually set a trend for, let's say, set a trend for the study of earthquakes in the Paleologan era?
It is also, we have one good by Ioannis Telelis, yes, who wrote, it is because he studied this, the reception of meteorology in Byzantium in general, and he found that before 11th century we have no evidence, clear evidence at least, that meteorology was taught in schools. Psellos was the first author and first teacher that we know that he was teaching his pupils about this, and which I even had on one. He wrote 4 we have 4 texts on earthquakes by Psellos. 4 texts. And this one, the most important, from which I showed some quotations, it is a speech. And it happened on concrete after one earthquake that hit Constantinople on September 23, which was day of John the Baptist. And it is said in title. It is the most important, and his Christian approach, his point of view, is expressed in this. But all 3 others are shorter. They're mostly based on Aristotelian, the text of Aristotle, and they were written for his students. So we have 3 things. One of these, at least, is problematic from the point of view of authenticity. It could belong to some other, because the point of view is different. In this text, the author follows John the Lydian, not Aristotle, and it is the author of the 6th century, first half of the 6th century. But in 2 others are very similar to each other. One belongs to Omnifaria Doctrina. It is so very short text, and the other is more extensive, about 3 pages in Teubner edition, and it is it is a compendium actually of what Aristotle says about. It is the first real clear evidence that this subject was taught in Byzantium after the 6th century.
Thank you very much. I have just one comment. It's very interesting to see in comparison to how we started the conference yesterday, when I said that Wittgenstein thought that any kind of intervention from above would be superstition. Nowadays, everybody would think of his additional explanation as superstitious, not as being part of a proper explanation or part of proper faith. People don't believe in interventionist God. Usually even they try to make some kind of compromise, but interventionist God is somehow out of question nowadays. So it's very interesting to see that the world was very different back then. And that was proper scientific explanation and proper part of the faith as well. It wasn't superstition. So thank you very much. So thanks once again.